Joining me today are the Slow Horses composers, Daniel Pemberton, Pablo Clements, and James Griffith, known as Toydrum. They have been nominated for an Emmy for Season 3 for Best Original Score. And the series is airing on Apple TV. And if you have not seen it yet, you must. And they're here today to talk about composing together, how it started, and what is next for them. Welcome. Welcome, you three.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Now, I wanted to ask you, the first question is, what inspired you, three of you, to work together? Daniel?
Well, I've kind of known Pablo forever, like from when I was almost like a teenager and he was DJing in clubs, which I was going to. And I got like approached about doing Slow Horses, but the difficulty I have is I kind of like being really obsessive about everything I do, and I don't like just taking jobs on and just not really caring about them. But the problem is I had all these other films on, and it was like how can I take on a really big series, because they're like each series is like 6 episodes, and it's kind of like doing 2 or 3 films at once. And I wanted to find someone to work with who kind of shared the sensibility, the sonic sensibility of what I was trying to achieve with the show, which was try and create something that didn't feel like sort of generic TV spy music. I wanted it to feel very different and have a different edge to it. And James and Pablo's work as Toydrum I always thought was very good and very under the radar, and I thought they'd be really good collaborators to work with, and help us all create a sound that felt very different for TV series. And I think that's what's been exciting about this is, I think by now, by season 3, people are really kind of understanding what we've been trying to achieve all through this show.
Yes, that's wonderful. And Pablo, James, did you want to comment or add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess like Dan said, and then I think we had a mutual friend also in the music supervision, which was Catherine Greaves. And I think, Dan knew Pablo, and we all got in touch and decided we were available, and decided to do this thing. And I think we shared a very similar idea when Dan was talking about the show. I think we were all on the same page, definitely. So, and here we are at season 3. So,
wow, that's amazing. Pablo, did you want to add?
Well, no, I mean, that's how it all got together, and that's how we joined together. I mean, I've known Dan for many, many years, and but we hadn't seen each other, had we, Dan, for like years? You know what I mean? It must have been like 20-year gap, and then I think Dan came down to our studio about 8-9 years ago now, maybe. What were you working on, Dan?
Yeah, well, I did something with so Pablo and James have a very crazy studio, which I describe as the sonic equivalent of Slough House. It kind of looks like it looks like a shithole basically from the outside. You have no idea what magic is inside it, but inside it is a bunch of I would say somewhat Slow Horse style characters, all beavering away, unappreciated by the outside world. They're not flash, and it's a real hotbed of like creativity and chaos, which is kind of like the way I like to work as well. And I think one of the things all of us in our approach to writing is we come at it from a different way that's not a particularly heavily schooled or systematic way of composing, which is like we just do the same thing on each film. And I think that's what we've really been trying to capture through the energy of the score is this sort of soundtrack that feels different and captures some of the kind of chaos and outsiderness of the characters in Slow Horses.
Yes, and for season 3, it's Strange Games, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and Tell us about the homemade instruments, if you will, unique, authentic, original instruments. Can you tell us how you created the score for this particular season? And it was filmed in Istanbul, is that correct? Or?
The opening episode was filmed in Istanbul. It kind of moves around. I think for this thing, what we normally do on each season is we all get together and we kind of like talk about what the approach is going to be. So for season 3, I came down to James and Pablo's studio, and you know, I get very excited when I'm there because it's like a different environment for me. And we just start kind of like playing off each other's energy and the sort of instruments there, and we start sort of jamming, and through that we get stuff that feels more unusual. Just do this kind of process of all just collaborating in the same room at the same time. I'm sure James or Pablo can tell you a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean,
our studio. Yeah, I guess we have a lot of weird broken instruments, and our studio has a sound that comes out of it, I guess. And it is always nice when Dan comes down because he's like, a lot of it's all new to him, so he's jumping around on stuff, and a lot of ideas start flowing really easily. But yeah, I mean, there's a mixture of, I mean, pretty much everything is organic, just a lot of organic and manipulated stuff to make it sound different. And I think we did bring in, for the more heavy gunfight stuff towards the end, we sort of brought in this very weird Russian synthesizer that we messed with, and that really helped with the coldness of the bunker and all that stuff. That was a sort of a new ad for that season. But yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff is like Dan, the instruments you were making were banjos, distorted banjos that sound like, I don't know what they sound like. It sound like something, but everything has an organic base, I guess. And it's just more manipulating what's there.
Yeah, it's very important. Like with this sound world, like what we try to do is differentiate the world of the park, which is a very surface, seemingly slick operation, with one of the Slough House and the Slow Horses, which is a lot more wonky and seemingly shambolic, even though they're pretty good, it turns out, sometimes at what they do. And it's trying to find how do we capture that in the sound and the tone of the show. So a lot of that is using sounds that have imperfections in them. And, you know, this kind of like reliance on, you know, it's a very heavy reliance on stuff that is organic. Organic stuff by its very nature has an imperfection to it, and a rawness and a visceralness that is lacking if you get stuff that is too slick or too conventional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's like the pacing is really important as well. When I was watching the trailer for season 3, it's very, in my mind, in my opinion, when they say it's very fast paced and it hits you and then it comes back, and it has you are storytellers, right? So it's very important that music plays a very important in movies and TV series. And where I'm going with this question is, what are some ways how you contribute your creativity while working with others, like the directors, the producers? How do you stay balanced, if you will, to have that creative license? And, you know, as I said, working with producers and directors, which I would think would be different from TV series as opposed to movies.
Yeah, it's like what we normally do is we normally all go for spotting sessions. So the director this season was Saul Metzenstein. So we'd all of us would go to the spotting session with Saul, and we'd all together watch each episode through. But we kind of get involved. What we normally do is we get involved early on, and we come up with concepts and ideas based on the scripts. But we don't really get our hands properly dirty until they've shot and start editing the film. We then go to a spotting session with Saul and the editors, and we talk through all the beats in the episode and what we think the music should achieve, what's going to help the story, how do we give it a shape so it's not all the same things, it's a dynamic and arc through it and a storytelling arc. And then we go off and we each work on different bits. I might work on a couple of scenes. James and Pablo go and work on scenes. James and Pablo are absolutely fantastic at doing action stuff. So I'm always like, hey, do you want to do the action scenes? And we'll like carve it up between us and then send them back and forth. So, you know, Toydrum might send me some stuff they've worked on. I'll go into it and then I might do some tweaks and vice versa. And I'm sure they can talk to you a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead, Pabs. No, you go.
Yeah, no,
you go.
it's a fun process. I mean, like each of the stories, you know, you're kind of constantly breaking it down, and you know, like especially with season 3. I mean, like if you were to look at the way the opening sequence of season 3 starts and the journey that it takes you through, you know, from action to emotional to also being based in Istanbul, and the influence of the music, and also tying it into the kind of the sound bed that Slow Horses is. It's a real approach of, you know, that part of the show is very different to even, you know, 10 minutes later within it, you know. So the story's always changing and the tone is good, you know, like, you know, and kind of moving always in different directions, especially with season 3. As it gets to the later seasons, it starts to get more, as it gets into the bunker, it gets more rawer and pulsing and heavier, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
in that first episode.
Oh, I was just gonna.
We have the sort of Istanbul traits of like there's like themes that we come up with. Like that kind of opening has a lot of seeds which get planted on later in the episode with some of the characters like Donovan. You know, he has a theme, and so we kind of like try and work out what the key between us. What each episode has a sort of a theme running through it, alongside the sort of slow horses in the park. There's also normally a new storyline, a new adversary, or a new mystery, and we try and come up with themes for those in those early sessions.
James, did you want to add?
Oh, I was just, you were talking about how we, you know, asking about working with the directors and the spotting sessions. I was just going to say, it seemed like season 3, wouldn't you say, like it seemed like we had a bit more, because people were confident with the sound and everything had been really stamped down, that it seemed like we have it felt a bit more fun, a little bit more freedom, maybe why this season is stuck out, especially, I don't know. Seems like as we go, it's just a bit easier to work, that everything's been established. That's all I was going to say. So it was really fun to the collaboration really started to work, and with the director and everything, I think everyone's really confident in what we're doing. So it just seems a bit easier, a bit more fun. That's what I was going to say.
Which leads to me, how much fun do you have working together? I mean, you have years of experience.
I mean, I always love getting, when we get stuff through, and it's exciting because I'm so used to working on my own the whole time. Like I kind of do everything on my own for most projects and most films. So it's quite rare for me to actually, you know, have other people working on something together. So it's kind of exciting when you get something through, especially when you get like a really great sequence through and you're like, fuck, this is great. And that's always a good vibe. Like, it always gets me kind of excited about the project and excited about the show, because, you know, you've kind of got, you know, normally it's just me, and having these extra ears and extra eyes on it means you get something that's like, you know, got a wider breadth to it.
I mean, when we started, like we were saying, you know, we have a couple of days where we literally go into our studio and record the instruments that we've decided we're going to use for that season. And, you know, we just pretty much don't let the record not record, you know. It's just everything's been, and those days are really good fun, you know, because you're kind of restricting yourself to the tone, and we all go away with what we've recorded, and that's the basis of what we use, you know, for the show, the season, you know. And it will differ from every season, and that's what's quite exciting as well. Yeah.
And Jane, did you want to add any?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, those are those. I mean, it is fun, and like I said, I think the it's taking time. Dan's. I mean, we're used to collaborating, Pablo and I, so we're always doing stuff together. But I think it just like anything. I think we've really started hitting the stride in 3, so it just gets more fun every time. I think, and yeah, but those initial sessions are always great because it's just try anything. Nothing's out of bounds, and yeah, a lot of great stuff comes from it. So, yeah.
Yes. And just one last question before we wrap up. And what has the feedback been like so far? Because I said at the beginning, if you haven't seen it, watch it. But tell us what the feedback's been like so far. Daniel?
It definitely feels like from season 3, the world kind of started to catch up to what we were doing, which is, because I think early on, if you're trying to approach a series and a film in a way that has its very own particular musical language, and it's very important to all of us that we create a language that had limitations on it. So we kind of banned the use of strings, banned the use of big, thumpy, heavy drums, and anything that was sort of overused and sort of more conventional in drama scoring. And it means you, in some ways, like you start off creating something and you've got your own limited palette and your own limited techniques, which means you have to write in a different way. And I think what's been good is, I think by the time you get to season 3, you can really understand this approach that we've been all trying to do. And it's been very satisfying to see, to get this nomination and for people to understand, from the first couple of seasons. I think people, because it's a different sound, it's sometimes it's difficult for people to sort of appreciate that. And I think the more they get used to it and the more it feels like meshed to the show and it becomes an integral part of the show, and hopefully is part of the reason the show has been such a success. I think really think in season 3 that comes to the fore.
Thank you.
I agree.
And Pablo, James?
No, I mean, I think that's exactly like Dan said. It seems like, because it is you've created a palette that's very different, and it's the first song super slick, and like a lot of scores are that in that way, or they seem very like almost polished in a bad way. This is very rough around the edges, and we've kept it that way on purpose, and everything's been very deliberate. And yeah, it's great. It's great to see that people, it's like Dan said, it's stuck to the show. It's a big part of what the visual is. So yeah, it's great that people are catching on. So yeah, just in time.
Yes. And Pablo, did you want to add before?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the show in a whole as well is like this season 3. It's like the world, the thing that's been quite nice about working on this show, it never felt that Slow Horses, even though people knew it was out there, it's like the world caught up with the show as well. Yeah. It's like people really, really did when we first started doing it in season 1 and stuff, you'd ask people and be like, yeah, I've heard about that. I've not seen it yet, but now season 3's out. With this season, it felt like the whole world loved it. So it's really nice to be the tone to that, and the sound to the show.
Thank you very much for your time today. I so enjoyed the interview, and congratulations again.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, sorry, we're all spread out. Sorry, I'm in a car. Like I said, summer holidays with children. It's been hectic. So thank you very much.
No, I so enjoyed it, and so well deserved, if I may say.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.